Welcome to Book Lounge by Libby. I'm Joe, and I am so happy you're here. This is the place where book lovers, authors, and industry insiders come together to talk about the stories we love and the impact they have. Now, before we dive in, don't forget to follow the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you do your podcast listening, and subscribe to the Libby App YouTube channel so you never miss an episode. Yes, that does include full video episodes on YouTube and Spotify. If you love what we're doing, consider leaving a 5-star review on your podcast platform or commenting under the video on YouTube. These engagements really help more folks find the show, and I truly appreciate it. All right, enough of the podcaster stuff. Today's episode is about going beyond the label, highlighting authors who they themselves, family, or people they care for, or their characters experience differences in abilities, neurodivergent, chronic illness, and more. In segment 1, I'm joined by Marie Myung-Ok Lee, an acclaimed Korean-American writer and author of the novel The Evening Hero. She graduated from Brown University and was the first Fulbright scholar to Korea in creative writing. And she is one of the few journalists who have been allowed to travel to North Korea since the Korean War. She is also a mother to a son with disabilities and has written many articles about how her son's disabilities have taught her about having it all. So let's turn the page and dive on in to segment 1. Marie, I'm so excited to have you here today. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks, Joe. I'm just so thrilled to be here. I can't tell you.
That means the world to hear. And we were talking beforehand of all of our library love, but I want to dive right in to your work. It is wide ranging, it's layered, and there are so many threads I'll try to pull at today, but I'd love to start truly very personal to just jump right in. Your journey as both a writer and as a parent. Now, your son's autism has been central to your life. How has parenting shaped you personally and creatively over the years?
I think one thing, if I could just be totally honest, is
Yeah.
being a writer and language being my entire life. It's been really difficult, and I gotta say, like, devastating to have a child who has a language disorder. But I will actually talk to you a little bit about later because he's made a very weird pivot that we could not have foreseen. I'll give you a little spoiler alert. After all, we've been trying so much weird stuff with him, and including him trying to get him to point to a board.
Yes.
After 10 years, he got it. I had a sort of Anne Sullivan, Helen Keller moment with him. He managed to point out HOPE, although it took like half an hour. But now he can give me feedback on all stuff I've written about him, and it's been so illuminating. So just this whole arc, I mean, he's 25 now, and he's
Oh.
had these issues pretty much since he was born.
Mhm.
And it's first, as a writer, I need a lot of solitude, and this has upended everything I thought about what my career is going to look like. I'm a literary fiction writer. I just want to be writing my literary fiction, going to residencies all the time, and then having a son who he also has these myriad medical issues. He's medical fragility. He has an autoimmune gut
Mm.
disorder, and it's something my time, which I used to guard so carefully, was just completely splintered. And then also the idea of, so I actually never thought I was gonna have kids. I actually thought I was gonna be living in a garret with my cat. And so I didn't know a lot about parenting, but I did know that, wow, normal when you have kids, there's like, they say they love you and they want to cuddle with you. And I had these like very vague ideas of what being a parent was like. And it was not nothing was reflected back to me. Nothing that I saw my friends who I always felt were much better at parenting. Nothing showed me what I was supposed to do or feel, or it was just all, and the experts were all just saying, he just needs to be in an institution. Like, what's your problem? He's headbanging, he's attacking you all the time. Like, if you're a good parent, you put your kid away. And I just thought that's like the one thing for which now I feel I have made this weird transformation, feeling like, oh, you know what? I was like a terrible parent and I had no idea what I was doing to. Actually, I did know what I was doing, but I couldn't articulate it. And some of that had to do with someone asking me. The first time I ever wrote about Shay was someone wanted me to be in an anthology about raising a toddler, but I could tell it was gonna be like, oh, toddlers are so much fun. I told her,
Mm.
well, do you really want me to write about this? And when
Right.
I did, yeah, she just published it, and it actually got a really good response where I thought was very raw and kind of like, you are not going to have kids after you read this.
Well, and there are so many things you've said right here that just that like this is what this is about. Parenting, I want to say looks different for everyone, but as you said, like you you are a writer, you deal in language, and yet your own child cannot give that back to you, or it took a very long time to find his language within your language. And, the balance of you don't have the easiest journey to the express consent of like, can I share about our life? Like you didn't have for a
Yes.
very long time the opportunity to hear his thoughts on your thoughts, but even all the way back to writing about childhood, like you didn't have the same experiences. You didn't, even though, as I said, like, well, everyone's different, that's still so trite and follows the narrative of like, well, some kids are just having a temper tantrum where some do whatever. And, and you still expect that air quotes for the listener only normal. You expect the cuddles, you expect the I love you moms, you expect so many of these things. And shift that's not here for me. And so first let's talk about guarding your time, because right, I expect writers, as you say, to be solitary creatures, to need to spirit away to a writer's retreat, to a cabin in the woods, to, as I learned recently from Neil Schusterman, a cruise ship. When he gets writer's block, he takes a cruise, and while everyone's doing excursions and he has a whole empty deck to himself, he just writes. What is what does that look for you, because you chose to listen to your gut and say, no, I'm not putting my kid in an institution.
So when I first wanted to be a writer, also I have immigrant parents and they said I had to be a doctor. And
Of
then I
course.
ended up flunking out of pre-med, but it wasn't time for me to be an English major. It was time for me to major in economics. But then I had this plan. I had a plan instead of getting an MFA, because that would cost money. I was going to live in New York somehow and be closer to publishing by becoming an investment banker. So at the same time, my parents were like, oh, look, she's an investment banker. She's going to go to Harvard Business School at some point. Where I was like, okay, I can make enough money to live alone. That was the key. I needed to make a fair amount of money. I couldn't do this on waitressing. So I'm working at Goldman Sachs, but in order to get my solitude time, we had to get there pretty early because you have to get there before the stock market opens. I would get up at 4 or 4:30 in the morning. I would write, take my quick run around the reservoir, take the subway down. So move that to when Jay is a little kid, like screaming all through the night, can't sleep, whatever. I still need my solitude, man.
It doesn't change just because life changes. You still need what you need.
100%. Some of my old Instagrams are all pictures of the oven clock at 4 in the morning. So that habit just really helped me because he would normally be quiet between 4 and 5.
Right when you needed it, when you were used to it.
I had my time, and then I would do other things that were not so smart. I would skip a lot of meals so I'd have more time. I'd get him on the bus. It's Indy 500 time. I'm still working and da da da.
Right.
And then occasionally I did get to go to some residencies for much shorter time than is ideal, because everyone likes to go and like stretch out the time for they'll give you time for like 3 6 months. I'm here for 2 weeks. But they would also give me extra money so I could have extra care for my son. And then psychically, I would not feel as bad about this, but physically being away, no. So I still need my residencies and I still did them. And I'm still so completely grateful for, you're right. My practice, what I needed didn't change. So I had to kind of work around it.
Absolutely. And now this is that moment where I'm gonna be like, but I'd love for you to brag for a minute here. Talk about your writing and your career, and let the people know, Fulbright scholar, the first to specifically Korea creative, like creative literature. Like, please talk. I want you to brag for a minute. Like,
Oh, thank you.
tell us all about it.
I think part of it then is just because I am so stubborn. Yeah. So I got my
but
Fulbright.
resilience is a part of going beyond the label. So please be stubborn.
Right. But for, for people who are out there who love books and think they want
Mhm.
to be a writer, that was the one only thing I've ever been sure of in my life since I was
Yes.
9, that I'm going to be a writer somehow, even though that's the craziest thing ever. My parents really did not like that idea. So when I needed to research, go to Korea to research my novel about creative action, I applied to Fulbright. But at the meeting, they said they've never had a creative writing Fulbright before. It was all people who want to study currency and cars. I was like, well, I'm gonna just have to be the first then. It took some time. For this current novel, and going back, it took me 18 years to write, partly because I'm only allowed to write for like an hour or two in the morning. It took me 18 years to write. Part of it, I had this feeling that I had to actually somehow go to North Korea to do some of the research.
Thinking about that, you are one of the very few people since the Korean
Korean
War
War,
who has
yes.
been welcomed. That still all feels like a tough word to use. Welcomed
Yeah,
into
but
North
with a
Korea,
visa, correct.
right?
That is a welcoming.
Well, that's
I did,
true. That's true.
yeah. They don't give out a lot of visas. And they especially don't give out visas to Korean Americans because we're not supposed to exist because North Korea is the best place in the world. Why would you want to live anywhere else? So yeah, it was a kind of like it wasn't sneaky. The way I finally got in via many aborted attempts was by going with a group at Brown of students who were they got they got to go to North Korea and they needed a faculty advisor. And there were two of us. One of the guys chickened out because that was when they were like testing all the bombs and everything. And I get it. And so, yeah. And I think the last thing I super want to brag about, which I actually have here, is this book is my book that contains all my emotions about my fear of gun violence and police violence because people with autism, people who are disabled have a much higher chance of dying of gun violence, even though as a society we think of them as being very dangerous. And this, I don't know why I had this idea to kind of take Of Mice and Men and kind of mix it up a little bit with some other emotional things that I've been thinking about. And I'd also written a lot about gun violence for The Nation magazine. And so this kind of just brought everything together for me. And so I'm just grateful because actually somebody posted about this yesterday on Instagram, but it was part of a fall book season because I think it's the colors. But just like
Yes.
I was like, what a great coincidence. And the book came out a while ago, and here I am here. And I don't know. So, anyways,
No, please. Do you want to talk about it? Give like a full description. Give like your elevator pitch of the book.
sure. I'd love to.
All right,
So
because again, gorgeous cover. It does have that fall vibe, but the message, like,
I'm so happy. Then I also realized after I wrote it and I got some feedback from publishers, why no one has tried to rewrite Of Mice and Men. It's kind of a depressing story. And
kind of a hard one.
nobody likes sad endings and murder and or whatever. Nobody
Right.
likes these things. But what this was for me and what it was, and actually I'm glad this is a great opportunity because my son actually learned how to talk as this was getting published. But
Yes.
it's basically about a girl named Georgia and her older brother has autism and they're Korean and the parents are being very Korean about it. They really want to help him, but at the same time, they find his autism troublesome because he gets big. And then Georgia has to be the container of all their hopes and dreams for Harvard because there's nobody else. And she is actually doesn't really know what being Korean is like. And she falls in with these Koreans who are at a hagwon, which is like a study thing. But it turns out there's actually like this cute dude who's not that bright, a study thing, and he's really cute. And she kind of likes him, but she'll have to keep it secret from her parents because he doesn't want to go to college. So, but a lot of this, the way that I felt like this worked out for me as someone talking about autism is it's less about Leo himself, and it's more how Leo within the constellation of the family, and it's also a lot about siblings. I think people forget that the most affected in a family are siblings. And one of the things that I found out when I did a lot of sort of hanging out, like talking to people, and there's actually sibling groups, is this overwhelming need for the sibling to not be any trouble at all, like zero trouble. But that ends up them being, like cutting off parts of themselves and sacrificing themselves for their sibling. And so that is the dynamic that I also wanted to talk about. Like, how does Georgia like kind of find herself and get herself in alignment with what she wants when she has all these things. Like she's better about fighting with her parents, but her bond with her brother is just so it's a little bit, like the Lenny with the bond with Leo, as he's called, is something that's immutable, but it's complex for someone
Absolutely.
who needs to go out in the world like Georgia
Absolutely.
needs
And I
to.
and I feel like you're absolutely right. We forget so often about the other kids because they do fall into that perfect role. They're forced to mature too fast to be another caregiver and right, step away from their own needs because there are enough needs attempting to be met elsewhere.
100%.
Now, what also triggered bringing in the conversation on gun violence and police brutality into the book?
That is very personal for two
Mhm.
things. One of them
Sure.
is we have had the cops called on us many times. Even when my husband and I are professors, when we were living in Providence, we drove a Volvo. Like, how much more stereotypical? Like, when our
Yeah, how
friends
many
who,
more
yeah,
boxes can you tick? Like,
our friend who's Dominican, whenever she sees our car, she's like, "This is a Blanquito car," and I'm like, "Yes, I know. It's boring. It's very mid. This is what you do." It had an extra set of seats in the back, so Jason, who is very rambunctious, the car could have his own seat way in the back, even though he has still tried to damage the car. So he's having this tantrum in Whole Foods. Things are flying. This is not the first time I've had to abandon a shopping cart. So I get him out into the car and he gets to sit in his seat and chill out. And next thing we know, there's cops there and someone saying like we were abusing him or kidnapping. I can't even remember. There was a couple times they're all running together in my head. And that one got diffused because actually the guy said, oh, he had a nephew with autism. And he was all completely like, oh, that's dumb. And then he
right,
actually kind of yelled at the other person. But more recently, what happened that really made this sink in is that so Jason was just having a super hard time. We were bringing him to his therapy. And he just needs a lot of muscle when he's not doing well. So it was me, my husband, and his aide, who's African American. And Jason started attacking my husband. So my husband's going, help, help. Appropriately, the police come running. We live in New York City. I see them running. One guy's got a hand on his gun. I'm like flinging myself. And he's like, you can't touch me. It was just completely like instinct.
right.
I just like slang myself on him.
To protect your kid.
And Carlton, his aide, also like put his body between the cops. And then we were like, oh no, we could just see there were three of them guns. My husband's still like, ah, Jason's still completely out of control. And that could have gone so badly, so
Right.
quickly. And then it reminded me of the piece that I wrote about in the Nation, where there was an African American aide with his charge. Someone called the cops just because, wow, that's suspicious. A very large autistic kid with his African American aide must call the cops. So the aide is like lying on the ground to make sure he's not a threat. He has his arms up. The guy, the autistic kid, is profoundly autistic, doesn't follow directions. There, he, the aide is saying he has autism, don't shoot. He has autism, don't shoot. The aide got shot after all that. The boy did not die. He didn't get shot, but it became one of these things like, well, he was playing with a toy and they thought it was a gun. And then lastly, there was an incident in Costco where an adult was kind of there were samples involved, put it that way. It's
Sure.
Costco. There may
Right.
have been some pushing involved. There may have been very understandable jostling involved. There was the cop who got pushed ended up not only shooting the young man, but this is the scenario that haunts me as a parent. Because
Mm.
just like I went like this, his parents did this too. They ran and said,
Yep.
no, he is intellectually disabled, but both the parents got shot. They lived, but unfortunately, they were in critical care and they are not doing well. The young man got
Right.
killed. And
Ah,
that was kind of the last part where I just said, look, everybody ignores this. Nobody really knows it's happening unless you're within this like community, unless this has happened to you. And people don't understand, when my friends say, oh no, we are not ever afraid of the police. The police are our friends. Is her actual quote. And I'm just like, that's not what I see when I see the police. Ever. Ever. And I know they try to uphold the law, but that's not how I see them.
there's so much happening in a moment. Like they're in the situation you described. I'm like, what could anyone of your own? I'm just thinking of your husband calling for help and truly the perfect storm that that situation brings, because what could anyone think in a moment? There's so much to try to dissect and so quickly. I mean, my sister is an occupational therapist. She works in schools. She works with kids with disabilities. I in my early days of college was an aide. Like that was part of what put
Ah,
me through college. So
okay.
I am very aware of the care centers, the being out and about in public. Like there are so many different moments, and even though I have an awareness of this, I am not aware of these stories you have just shared. And that to me is just, it's so mind bending when you think about that. And it kind of leads into my next thought of just like parenting obviously has to have shifted the way that you think of storytelling, of empathy, or even what you want to tell. How has this journey shaped where you were with the story that took you 18 years to where you are today?
That's such a great question because it's made me examine my own inherent biases about what you think about language and what it says about the person. Because what happens when the inner self does not match up with the outer self? Or, as an academic, I'm so about is
You
the
want to
person
dive into
articulate?
everything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
use big words and speak really fast. And that's just kind of my world. And I think this is a perfect time to talk about. So when this was being published, first I asked Jason, is this weird for you? Like, should I publish this now that you can talk and you're your own person that we have not known for 24 years? So no, he said it's fine. He said it's fine, but he did say he was glad that I have been stepping back because he wants to be a writer and tell his own stories. And he said he understands why I've done this. So what I did is when they do the audiobook, at least most of the publishers I've worked with will give you a bunch of people that you can audition. And I listened to them all. There were 5 people. And there's one person who had a gravelly voice that I thought she sounds just like Georgia. She's tough, but kind of sweet. And like, I could tell she's funny. So I'm like, okay, I want her. But then in that was when Jason like learned to talk. So I was like, okay, Jay, you listen to these, you tell me. I secretly thought he was going to pick the one mommy wants. Do you know what I mean? I just thought we're kind of
Yeah.
attuned that way.
You've got that link. You're expecting, oh,
Right?
we see the same person.
And it was obvious to me the woman sounded most like the character. So he's like, now he picked someone totally different. And I had to say, what's up? Okay, we'll go with this person, but what's up?
Yeah.
He said the person spoke the most clearly first.
Oh my gosh.
And then I was like, what I was saying with the inherent biases. I was all,
Right.
And then he said person's tone was better covering like the entire story. Yikes. And occasionally I get compliments on the audiobook. I'm like, good thing he chose the voice.
But that's so fascinating because I'm with you. I right, I have my biases. And as I said to you before we recorded, I'm always listening to an audiobook. And so I jump to like, oh, I'm with you. I want that performance. I want the, but that is because I don't have anything that is challenging my auditory processing. I don't have anything. So I'm looking for the most engaging whatever. And sometimes, right, you miss out on the full performance because you get caught up in like, oh, this will be really good for these moments. And it sounds like he had the thought of like the expression for the whole ride.
100%. Like tonally, the person was better. Where I was like, but the other person sounds like she's smoking cigarettes. You know what I mean?
Right. She's got the like second hidden life right there in her
Yeah,
voice.
exactly.
What was your son's journey like to finding his voice? Is that something you want to share?
Oh, absolutely. Because I can tell you, he is writing his own memoir now. He's calling it
Oh,
a manifesto. It's and that he's such an amazing writer.
yeah.
It really was. So he was suggested that he be institutionalized when he was 3 because he was doing a lot of headbanging. When he was 9, he was extremely violent. That's when we moved from Providence, Rhode Island to here because the only other schools that they suggested for us, one of them used restraints. The other was the Judge Rottenberg Center, which I cannot believe is still in business. They use electric shocks. If you look in New York Magazine did an article. Kids have died there. Somehow these devices are illegal in wartime. But
Right.
apparently the FDA made a special dispensation for kids with autism because they must not be people. It's crazy. So my husband and I had to do this whole thing moving here. That's why we live here because he had no other things for him. So and then at the same time, still when we were in Providence, I saw this thing on TV with this lady from India named Soma. She taught her nonverbal. So I will make a distinction. Our son is non-speaking, and one of the things that diverted people is he can talk, he can speak language, like he can scream at me, I am hungry," for which I used to feed him until he threw up, and I didn't understand. So we had language, whatever language he had, the spoken language, I would follow because that's all we had. But so Soma's son doesn't talk at all. So he's silent and he learned how to do all this stuff. And I'm like, oh, so she's so busy that even though this is very much of a fringe therapy, I had to, well, it's not a lie. I said I was interested in writing an article on it. And so we did get a, like like a 20-minute slot with her. So we drove down from Providence to do that. And she did this whole lesson, and it was less about pointing, but it was more like he would have to choose items, and it was some lecture about helium, and I wasn't 100% convinced about it that
Sure.
that was really happening, like 50-50 chance, etc. So we went back, but then one of my other friends kept bugging me. She's like, "Don't you want to have him talk?" I was like, "Of course I want to have him talk." She's like, "Well, you got to keep doing this, and there's different ways." We're just we're in New York, and then we're there. I met these other moms where we'd pool our money and like bring these different practitioners in. I would try to do it at home with him during COVID. I spent a lot of time doing this, but zero. In fact, I literally was reading this story about Helen Keller, and I said, and then she spilled water, WATER, with her aide, Anne Sullivan. And I'm like, when am I going to have my Anne Sullivan moment?
Right.
But then one of the things that you will enjoy is when he was 16, I decided, you know what? They're only reading Goodnight Moon with him at school. Yes, because I just thought he is an IQ 40. This is where he is at. We had a big argument over, they never really taught him how to read. They just gave him like what are called sight words, words on a piece of paper, 50 words in toto, for which I was like, this is not going to work. How's he going to ever like learn how does he know?
Communicate. Right.
Correct.
Where is the reading? Where is
There
the
is no reading.
communication? Right.
What if the font changes? So I taught him phonics at home, even though I'm not sure he like noticed because he was kind of tantruming the entire time.
Sure.
But so I was like, okay, we're gonna just read stuff that I happen to have around. So we read, get this, it's like the most motley clutch of, we read the Mavis Gallant Paris stories. We
Of
read
course.
we read Casey Lehman's Heavy, which I was halfway through going, oh wow, this content's really interesting, but I guess he's like 16, so we can keep going. I
Sure.
read The Secret Life of Church Ladies, which also had some interesting content. I read H is for Hawk, which actually also has a lot of interesting content. I don't know if you have read it, but there's a lot of things about falconing.
Um,
Well, there's a lot of things about falconing and how there's like, think about it, like there's sexuality in that
sure.
kind of dynamic,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
captured falcon and like the leggings and all this kind of stuff. So, but I was like, he's this age. I just kept doing that. And so now, so then the one day, we're still just having these crazy, we brought him to to Soma's like camp in Austin. So we're like paying all this money to go there for like 20 minutes for like 3 days. He did manage with her, which he asked him, where would you like to go to travel? And he actually spelled to her the Grand Canyon. And
Wow.
we're like, does he know how to use like articles? We were completely flabbergasted. Plus, my husband does a lot of stuff about the national park. So we're like, he even knows what the Grand Canyon is. Like, we were completely weirded out. But then we were just like,
Well,
okay,
that filled in the gap though of like, where is the knowledge of the Grand Canyon coming from if they're only reading him Goodnight Moon? Like, right.
exactly, exactly.
So just inherently at home, he's hearing your husband talk on all sorts of things.
He's actually like, yes, he's present. And then,
Right.
so, but of course, so for the next 2 days, we're like, okay, this is going to happen. He just like trashed the office for 2 days. Like, actually, he put his head through their wall. Like, there's an impression of his head. So we're like, we're back to this doesn't work. And so months later, I'm just like, like I'm doing this. I feel like there's no result. And I finally, one day, we actually had a kind of good session. Yeah. So I said, Jay, I was like, you seem happy. Is there any reason? So I'm holding this board, holding this board. And he did, as I mentioned earlier, he spelled Hope really slowly. But I read to my husband, normally he'll just, a lot of times I would give him the board. It's like when I had my cat. I would give him stuff and he would just sniff at it. So I gave him the
Right.
board and he would just like, you could tell he wasn't even like engaged. So I
Right.
told my husband, no, 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 there's something there. He actually spelled this. So we're actually thinking back, maybe he really was spelling the Grand Canyon. So then the weirdest thing that happened later is apparently this for the Indian woman, Soma, she was getting a lot of pushback because some people will give their kids like support on their arm while they're spelling. And then it's like, oh, you're just like making them spell. And so she had these strict things. Like I'd have to try to teach in front of her, and that would make me even more scared of like teaching for my own students. You were not allowed to touch them. Like, stay away. Like she had all these like protocols, but that was the biggest thing. You're not allowed to touch them. So that became this like, I'm going to touch them. I'm going to go to hell kind of thing in my head. But then this other practitioner's like, no, maybe he needs like more support. Like it might be an apraxia, like a executive functioning thing. And then so that's weirdly, and he would still like try to push her. She was like this Long Island lady who's very tough. No, she's like, she'd grab his hand, like, no, 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 no punching with one hand. And she would support his hand. She's like, actually, when she pour, it seems better. So he started spelling with my husband. Like one day it was like bizarre. It just started like my
It
husband
just
somehow,
clicked.
yeah, like gave him enough traction. So it's not like, and also, how are you going to make someone spell? How are you going to make them like,
Right. You can't pick the letters for them, but you can support them so that there is enough muscle strength or momentum going.
exactly. So we're immediately asking him all these crazy trick questions. Do you know what critical race theory is? He's this like, when it's judicially, and we're like, we're just like, what's happening? But he said, I'm listening. And then we're just like, we're confused. Like, how did this happen? And then he also showed us he has some eye issues, but that we had to do these quizzes on our phone with him. And he's like, no, I can read this. We're like, okay. He can read 2 lines. And I'm like, when did this happen? Because we were always like giving him books, we're giving him audiobooks, he wouldn't listen.
Right.
So basically what I've been doing with those other books is reading to him at night, like the reading heavy, the like the baby's
Right.
collapse stories. And he's like just being silly and making his noises. So I have no idea if it's sinking in. But he said between that and then one day when we were in New York, which also is really cool because I'm like, moving to New York changed his life. He said there's text everywhere. It's like a Libby
You're bombarded.
outside.
Right. You're
Yes.
bombarded with it. It's
He said it's a big
everything.
library. He said actually his pivotal moment was seeing an erectile dysfunction ad in the subway. And suddenly he was like, those weird things that
All
mom
of a
was like
sudden.
yakety yakking about. Yes, he just said one day it just completely clicked. But then something about him being read to and that. And so that's a crazy thing. So he's pretty much we can talk to him now and he can tell me. I said, well, so what was up with you screaming at me to feed you and then you throw up? He said, no, he said, my language is not functional. His spoken language is not functional. He still can't do yes or no questions. So half the time I would ask him yes or no questions, but it was just 50-50. He was just saying yes
It was
and
just
they,
whatever came out. Yeah.
yeah. And he couldn't tell us if he was hurt, anything. Like I had to figure out his arm was broken, that he had a cavity. But then it was like, is he just in a bad mood or just a cavity? And so now I can just be like, is this your stomach or you feeling nauseous? He's like, no, I'm actually like not hungry. Or it's like, it's just changed so much. And I will actually add, he feels like having been at the autism school like his whole life, he feels like a lot of his siblings, as he would put it, are
Hmm.
in there as well. That is his
Interesting.
idea. And that it's well, one of the things I have to admit is that this has become this huge class thing because we've met a few other like spellers. And there's actually an organization called Communication for All, which is trying to help because look, we have the money and the means being professors
Right.
to go to Austin and do this and like spend all this time. And everyone else we've met, they've been like Hollywood producers, and it's usually the dynamic has been the mom stays home to do this, and then the
Right.
dad goes out and makes tons of money.
The
And that,
resources have to be
yeah,
there. Yeah.
yeah. And being able to like spend 10 years at something that seems like a Sisyphean quest.
Well, absolutely. So did diagnostics ever change? Did you ever have retesting done? Like once this kind of like hurdle of behavior plus lack of communication, when all of these things changed, did you have like a second round of assessments done? Like what happened? It
That's a
sounds
great
like
question.
such a different journey from putting heads through walls to writing his manifesto.
Well, that is the actual like point that I'm like living in right now because so
Mhm.
he's in his last year of autism school, so we're going in there going, look, he'll talk to you and he'll be just like blah blah. And sometimes he'll secretly say this teacher like like stuff like that,
Yeah,
and we're like,
here you go. Here, look, here we are.
because so but then Jason comes home and tells us this. He said there was this book about, I don't know, the Amazonian rainforest. Like they were making him like carry all these books to reshelve them, which is kind of stuff that they do. They give them things to do that are kind of vocational. So he's sitting there like looking at the book, like, oh, the Amazon rainforest is like really interesting. I would like to read more about it. The teacher comes in and puts it back in there. It's like, Jay, you need to reshelve the stuff. So Jason, in his way, when his emotions get overregulated, he just had a giant tantrum. And so they just kept reading him Goodnight Moon and he just kept tantruming because I think the idea that someone who has been like rubbing their poop on the walls to knowing what critical race theory, that's just too much for people, especially, as an aide, you know that there are these rubrics and structures that you're brought up to believe about
Mhm.
capacity and potential. And it doesn't compute, it doesn't commute
And
with these
people seem to
experts.
people get stuck. Expert, like even with the word expert, experts get stuck away from the concept that this is a person and that we are all capable of change at all times. Like the idea that evolution feels like the wrong word, but again, that an evolution from one version of oneself to a new version, they forget that that exists. That there is a person there. That like everything isn't linear. Like yeah, there is going to be a moment where I cannot process both my emotions and the ability to say to you fast enough of like, oh no, I'm not doing the task. I'm not doing the task you assigned to me. I've just been distracted. Like when
And
I'm
I can
in the midst
read.
of like, well, right, and I can read and I know what this book is saying to me. I'm not looking at pretty pictures. I'm trying to learn right now. I mean, because I know like I'll be in the midst of doing a task and get distracted by something in my own house and go like, oh right. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I was doing something. I guess I should finish that. But the thought of like being so stuck and so rigid in the like, okay, you're experiencing this tantrum now, so here comes Goodnight Moon. It's just such a lack of it's maybe it's not a lack, like you said. I think you said it best. It's stuck. It's rubric. It's here's what we have to do.
And, one of the things that Jason has helped me see, was so obvious, is the experts do not want any input from their patients.
Right, from patients
There's
and especially not from the caregivers because you're too in the forest. You're too in the forest to see it through the trees, kind of thing.
right. Like, are we that unreliable? One of Jason's friends, she gave a convocation speech that she can type well without assistance, and there are
Mhm.
still people saying that she's faking it. So I'm like, okay, now we kind of know what sort of there seems to be like no limit to the skepticism that's going to greet Jason as he becomes a writer and shows that he is an intelligent person, even though on the outside he's still as disabled as ever. He still runs out into traffic, still makes funny noises.
Right. Ooh. So there are endless barriers, is what it sounds like. That there is a lesson in resilience for all of us here in this. That like we can do anything. We just might bump up against a lot of naysayers and non-believers and any number of things along the way.
Well, but one thing I will say is, have you heard about something called the telepathy tapes?
I have. I have. I've recently listened to a podcast about it, I believe, that kind of went through the different layers and right that it like the areas of nonverbal people communicating.
Exactly. So it seems weird
Yeah.
that on one hand there's a skepticism, but on the second hand there's just a cultural curiosity or even just like a cultural consumption of this idea
Yes.
that these kids have a secret life and can talk to each other on this hill or whatever. Do you see what I'm
Right.
saying? Like, how can we
Right.
have both?
Right. And where does the respect lie? Like, because right, there is like a level of infantilizing that's happening and then like fetishizing happening in the ooh, maybe there is a hill that they're all talking on. Like there can be both curiosity and then exploitation happening all at once. And like where do we bring in the positive? Where do we bring in the like forward progress?
Right. Or where do we just like want to listen to what they actually have to say?
Right. And it's the like part of me wants to blame our fast paced culture, and I mean I'm sure you feel it most of all in New York where everything is running and everyone's moving at 200 miles an hour, but taking a moment to breathe and to listen and to go through the process of waiting for those letters to spell out what the message is.
Oh, 100%. And then, like another thing that he often says stuff I don't agree with or I find, but I'm like, he's a person. For instance, we're constantly worried about what's going to happen when my husband and I pass away. We have to do something about it. So I had found this like beautiful, like community upstate called the Center for Discovery. And they just do a lot of sort of Waldorf type things. They have animals and people like live together. It's
Sure.
impossible to get on the wait list. So through my perseverance, I managed to shove him on the wait list. I'm so proud of it.
Yeah.
He said he's not interested in that. He said he doesn't like being around other disabled people. For which at first I'm like, wait, you're Mr. Disability Advocate? He's like, I'm like anybody else. I just want to be out with,
I just want
you
to
know
be
what
out in
I
the
mean?
world. I want to feel like everyone else.
And that's valid. At first I was feeling like, ooh, that's kind of uncharitable. But I'm like, wait, no, that's completely valid. And
Right.
so we took him off the wait list together while I was crying inside. I was like, do you know how
Do you know
hard
how
it
hard
got?
this was?
Yes. You know what I mean? And that was one of the places where I felt like if my husband and I like died and I subway crashed, like I feel like he was safe. And so now that there's this uncertainty, but at the same time, he has his agency. He says stuff he doesn't like. Sometimes he doesn't like, I didn't feed him enough now. Or, as a mom, I'm a little bit like, now that he's talking, he should only say nice things to me because he never called me mom for like 20 years. But he's his own person and he's annoying sometimes. And the masculine energy.
Oof, that's got to be
Oh,
exhausting.
yeah, it is.
But that's also where you're like, well, damn. Now I'm hitting like the other mom side that I longed for.
Yeah,
That you
100%.
that you have to like put aside the expectations of like, well, yeah, once you get talking, you're not always gonna like what you hear.
Yeah, or a lot of times I was telling him, I feel, wow, I really feel left out when you and dad are like spelling and he doesn't say what he's saying. He's like, I have girl problems. I don't want to talk about them with you. And I was like, oh, I get that now. But, or,
Oh,
he'll just be like, oh, I think this girl's kind of hot. Like when we're out and
yeah.
I'm just like,
You're
but
like, oh, I
okay.
don't want that. I don't want to hear
Yeah.
that
Don't
either.
want it, but you're a
But
dude.
that's life. Like that's what you're like this was the goal. You wanted the
100%.
you wanted the
Yeah.
normal.
Yeah. I want the full human complexity of him. That's who he is. Okay.
Right. You wanted like warts and all and here it is. It is the like most normal sentence to come from your kid, your son. Like this is the shop talk now.
100%. You think I'm going to be spelling? I try not to have a tantrum because I think that girl's hot.
You
Ugh.
know? You never know what's gonna bring us together. Now, I also want to take a moment to look at your writing from the perspective of a Korean American. I think this is the other side of the label. Where does the drawing from your identity and history lead? Where does it take your approach in weaving together personal experience with broader themes in your work?
I'm gonna actually write this out because I have a two-part thing in this. So, The Evening Hero, my novel, which was kind of long and took the one that took me 18 years to write. It's about a elderly Korean guy. His He's an OBGYN. He's the doctor I never became. And his hospital got closed because of private equity. And he's like stuck wondering what he's gonna do with his life. And then he's getting these weird letters from North Korea. And then we slowly learn about his life in North Korea during the Korean War, all the kind of crazy things that happened to him and some bad things that he did. Um, so that one is a lot for me. With my parents are also Korean War refugees. They were also undocumented immigrants. They are actually not talking about that kind of stuff. It's the trauma response. In fact, I even like signed my mom up for this thing called Korean Market Story, where it was a podcast, and they would do all the things with the lights and the mics. And I thought she would say something. She did not. She just would say the same kind of rote things they would say over and over again. So to some degree, and I'm only realizing this kind of in retrospect, a lot of this was me trying to figure out what their life might have been like. That milieu, at least. Young Man, the doctor, is actually much younger than my parents, so he's like a kid during the Korean War. But I think a lot of that research, especially going to North Korea, where both my parents were born, was a little bit like wanting to know more about it. But the ironic part of it is the book had actually started as kind of a tribute to Middlemarch, and it was
Oh,
more
okay.
about Einstein the son, because Middlemarch is super funny. It has this doctor character who his wife spends all the time. The doctor tries to do good things, and he accidentally kills someone. Oops. And so this was like this OBGYN like malpractice case, and it was all about monetization. And I was feeling very clever and very ambitious. And the novel was under contract, but what happened with the election in 2016 and seeing a lot of, well, I can actually tell you the actual like moment that I was like, I'm going to change this book, much to my agent's chagrin, is so my father, one of the reasons he wanted me to be a doctor was he was a doctor, and being a doctor got him out of first out of North Korea and then out of South Korea. And but because he was undocumented, he couldn't get like a job except for the one in this very rural town. Because when you cannot get a white American to do a job, an immigrant has to step in.
Yeah.
So my father was the anesthesiologist because that's the worst job because you're on call. It's not like when
All
you're
the
in a
time.
city, 100%, like
Right.
someone cuts your finger, birth,
You are the only anesthesiologist, so phone's ringing. Come on in.
and it's 20 below. No one wants that job. So that was my
Right.
dad's job. So almost everybody in the town, obviously live in a small town. It is the town where Bob Dylan grew up, by the way. Everybody, has been affected by my father because they were born or they had surgery, they had a chainsaw accident, whatever. Um, so my Facebook group, this is when Trump was talking about bombing North Korea all the time. My Facebook group, someone proudly showed their bumper sticker, which said, every day, 52 species of animal go extinct. North Koreans need to be next. And then I just was, yeah, that was
That
pretty
was
much
the
what
snap.
your look on your face was my look on my face, where I just said, I'm going to change this whole book around. And so the Youngmon parts used to be the filler, like the martyr between the Einstein running around the Mall of America. And so I just expanded it with the express idea North Koreans are human. I mean, sad. But to think that these people in my town could not understand, they are calling for genocide, including of the doctor who served the town so uncomplainingly, even after he became a citizen and could have moved to Minneapolis or LA or any place, but he had such loyalty. I thought, wow, this is my new task as a novelist, because novels can hopefully create empathy. That's what we try to do. We try to express someone's story so you can live in it.
Right.
That's why part of the reason it took 18 years. I was like, oh, from 2016, here I go.
I have to change everything. It's all new
Literally,
now.
literally, poor Einstein. Yeah.
But that is one of the things I love the most about reading. Like I'm a queer white man. Yeah, I don't deal with I don't deal with a ton. The white privilege is real. I understand that, but reading has always given me perspective. Like picking up a book like yours makes me understand something I can never live, but that I want to do better because of. Like that is why I read, and I am always so grateful when it goes beyond when you can pick up literary fiction, you can pick up a YA romantasy, and like no matter what, there is still perspective that will teach me. And that is such like the beautiful change that we've seen over the years, especially recently, that you don't have to pick up the nonfiction to learn the lesson. You don't have to pick up the memoir. You don't have to have something hammered home in a very clear, like A, B, C guidance. It's just there. It's just present. It is integral to the story because it's part of everyday life.
But Joe, so I'm going to ask you a question then.
Sure.
Like, what was your pivotal moment when you became a literature guy? Because 60% of people like never go to a bookstore.
Which blows my mind. Well, similar in a very different way. When I went to college, I was in a 7-year track to become it was a PhD program to become a physical therapist. And I thought I was going to go out and save the world's problems in my own way that way. And I got through my first semester, and in my second semester, there was a physics class, and I failed physics, miserably failed physics, because my brain doesn't do that kind of math. And I
The
could, and
32 seconds per second.
exactly. And this angle plus time plus whatever, like there was no hope for me in that world. And at the same time, this is when I was a home health aide. And, I was like, I don't need to understand this to understand people, to understand empathy, to do all these things. I mean, I was a reader my whole life, but I never thought something with books could be my career, that there was something worth sharing, that there was a message for me to spread one way or another, even if it was just saying to one of my friends, I think you'd love this book. Like I didn't think of like the evangelizing of books as something I could do. It was just, I need to do this to make money, to make a difference. And then when I was looking down the barrel of like, I can't do physics again because I couldn't do it the first time. So this isn't my direction anymore. It's like, well, what are you good at? I went, I'm good at books. So that became the English literature degree. And at the same time, it was like, well, I might as well double major because I can't just do English, right? Because I still fell into that trap of like, what do I do? So naturally I did the normal thing and the flip side was marketing. So it was
Hmm.
promotional
That's what
communications.
yep, 100%.
And even my advisor at the time was like, well, these two go together. This is the hand in hand. Some of your classes will carry over and the credits will balance out. And they never did because it's the easiest university lie. But with the 3 years I had left, I got my two bachelors in literature and promotional communications, and
Wow.
and that fit. Like that's where I fell into place. I found my people. I found my voice, and it was suddenly an easier journey. And that was it. I mean, like I knew my passion was libraries and I knew it was helping people. I just took what I thought was a very literal approach from, at 18, what do I know? Other than every teacher I said, "Oh, I'm going to be a physical therapist," who went, "You?" Uh, and I wish I would have listened to them, saved myself a year. But that was what brought me to here. I mean, this is,
That's incredible.
thankfully I failed because it helped me unlock what I actually cared about. I mean, I still care about the same thing, but I found the right outlet for it.
I'm loving that. You
Thank
just kind
you.
of like made your own thing and made it work because
Yeah.
you made it work.
I will Tim Gunn my way through anything if given the chance. I will knock on the door and say I want to do this until someone lets me do it.
But that's 100% what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't like to do anything. I was scared to even ask the stewardess, the flight attendant for more peanuts, but I am going to be a writer come hell or high water, man.
Absolutely. Like, oh, my free snack. No, no, no. Someone else wants
Right.
it. Give someone else too.
I don't want to bother you.
But like, no, no, I'm gonna put my headphones on and fall asleep against this window well. But we get there in the end. I know our time together is coming to a close, but when you think about being beyond the label, whether it's ability, heritage, anything that we've talked about today, what does it mean for you and to you as a writer and as a parent?
Oh, I'm excited because I forgot the number two thing I was writing
Oh,
down when
yes.
we were talking about
Yes.
your other
I'm
question.
glad you wrote it down.
There are certain genres that I'm super not into, like fantasy, science fiction. And so Beyond the Label thing is so interesting to me because um I just wrote a speculative short story that's well, it's 40 pages. It's not novel length at all. And it has no Koreans in it. Well, except as a one peripheral like cameo of Motley, but it definitely deals with this secret thing I've been harboring for so long about why is it in portrayals of outer space everyone's always white? So it's all white. They're living on Saturn, but I'm able to make commentary about it. But it was the most bizarre like download I've ever had of a story. I've always dreamed of something like this happening. So someone else download and I could kind of I mean it took me months to figure out where it was going and it was ending with a murder, but it ended up actually with a happy ending, which is not anything I ever do. The
I was gonna
characters
say
actually
that
literally
is not your usual.
no, the characters actually came back. Well, because what's interesting is I feel like even with my YAs, everyone always complains there's something like that happens at the end that's super violent. And I'm like, do you understand how much violence happens to Asian Americans? But because of the model
Every day.
minority,
Right.
we're all like, oh no, we're all doctors and we're all rich. Someone might call you the C word, but I was realizing that's a theme for me. And so the fact that, so no, there was this horrible murder, suicide by weird space guns. The characters actually came back and said, no, we want to live. And it's actually like very happy. So, but I'm very excited because I'm kind of like, I even like have this little Easter egg. It's like, she's lived long enough to be in a Ray Bradbury story because Ray Bradbury's the only speculative fiction writer that I've liked. Well, Ursula Le Guin, but they aren't quite like when you think of science fiction. So, anyways, that is my Beyond the Label because I never thought I would ever write a speculative story. It was the first time too where like even every time I went on social media where everyone's it's very distracting, if something perfect would come up, including these songs. So I was always jealous of these writers who'd be like, I had this playlist. And I would write it, whenever I was writing, I'd play the playlist. But this time I'm like, Spotify is my playlist. I can still hear it. No, it's
Yes.
just been so much fun. Like hopefully it'll get published and be out there or whatever, make a movie out of it. But I'm like, that was like the most satisfying thing ever.
Uh,
Yeah, that's my Beyond the Label for you.
I love that. And then to wrap us up, I want to do just a lightning round. Um, what is a book that you return to when you need comfort?
Middlemarch.
Love it. A writer who expanded your idea of what storytelling could be.
Judy Bloom.
Perfect. A small joy you've discovered through the journey of parenting.
Being able to make fun of my son and him laughing.
I love that. If you could tell your younger writer self one piece of advice, what would it be?
It's gonna happen. Don't compare yourself to other people.
Love that. And then to wrap it out, what's one word of hope readers use to describe your work? Or that you hope that they use?
One word.
It could be a
It's
couple words.
I'll have to give you a little anecdote. I am on the National Book Critics Circle, and this one person came up to me and said, your book, Finding My Voice, was like so instrumental to me growing up. And she's this white lady. And I'm like, was it the gymnastics then? Because it's all Finding My Voice is all about this Korean American girl who's like trying to make her way into the world. She said, no, it's just a good book. So I don't
It's
know,
just a good book.
empathy, like
Yeah.
gymnastics. I don't know what the word would be, but a lot of people will say that my work makes them think of their own lives in ways that are entirely surprising to me because I am writing very specifically about something specific.
You
But I
know,
love that.
but maybe it's like I always think of like the yoga practice of like the spirit in me sees the spirit in you. I think sometimes
Hmm.
the other
Yeah.
in me sees the other in you. That like so often when I read books by folks from Asian folks, from Black folks, like while I can never understand the depth and the like hereditary, like institutional natures that different groups have faced, the other in me resonates and finds the piece of like, oh, I feel a little bit of that in my otherness. Like the queer in me goes, oh, that I feel that. I know it's not the same, but I understand me better because of you. So I think
That's
I
100%.
think
You
there's
said it
that.
better. Yeah, you totally said it better.
Nah, eh, I get to do a couple of these. Marie, thank you so much for sharing your story and your perspective with us today. I love that your work reminds us that no one is defined by a single label, ability, heritage, or any other part of our identities. It's in the layers, the intersections, and the lived experiences that the richest stories get to emerge.
And thank you for helping these get these stories out to
Oh, that
everyone.
is that is the goal. That is the dream. Where can folks find you online? Where would you like to point people to? Anything you want to promote before we wrap up today?
You know what is funny is I was doing research on a character who's an influencer, and I'm weirdly on TikTok. My TikTok handle is daily underscore writing underscore makes underscore book. Daily writing makes book. And yeah,
And that's
that's
true.
yeah. And then basically wait for Jason's book to come out.
I love it.
That's yeah. Follow me on TikTok.
Perfect. We'll have that linked in the description. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
And listeners, now we will head over to our next segment. Well, hey, y'all, it is that magical time of the episode where we take a quick break and I share a Libby tip with you. Today, I want to talk about holds in Libby and some recent changes to the look of holds. Now, whether you are new to Libby or a seasoned borrower, I wanted to take a moment and share a zero stress guide of making the most of your time on the wait list. Now, thank you to my coworker Annie. If you'd prefer to read it, there is a link to her Libby Life article on holds where I have borrowed some of this language. If you'd prefer to read it, go check it out. Otherwise, it's in the episode description or the show notes wherever you're at. Otherwise, you can stick here with me and watch or listen as I guide you through some of those recent changes and what exactly all these things are. First off, I want to start out with what is a hold and why do we have holds on digital titles? Now, basically, a hold is a reservation in your spot in the line for an ebook or audiobook currently checked out by someone else. Just like you see with physical collection at the library, same thing with digital. When it is your turn on the wait list, it's your turn to borrow the title you've requested. Libby will send you a notification that your book is ready. You have 3 days to either borrow the title, suspend your hold, or cancel your hold if you've changed your mind on reading or listening to that piece. Before we dive a little deeper, you may be asking, why do digital titles have a wait list? And at the end of the day, it's all about fairness and supporting the creators behind the books. Just like physical books, libraries purchase individual copies from publishers, and each copy can only be checked out by one person at a time. This ensures that authors, narrators, and other contributors are compensated for their work, even when it's borrowed digitally. Libraries do their best to meet demand, but budgets cover a lot: the digital library, physical collections, community programs, and so much more. If all copies of a title are checked out, placing a hold lets you claim that spot online. Now, if you notice a long wait list, don't hesitate to let your library know. If their budget can accommodate it, they may be able to purchase additional copies to help more readers get access faster. Now, let's dive into my demo library here in Libby and we can take a look at the overall appearance. So give me just 1 second. All right, so now you should be seeing Libby nice and big on the screen if you are watching the video on the Libby App YouTube channel or on Spotify. Now your holds live on your shelf, and to access them, we are going to go down to the navigation bar and tap on the stack of books. That will take us over to our shelf. And then up in the top in our list of options, I am going to tap into holds. From here, you can go to any of the books in your list and see your place in line, your estimated wait time, and your options to manage or cancel your holds. So let me point out a few quick things. If we look at this copy of the Babysitter's Club graphic novel, in the upper right-hand corner, we have our library card with a clock. That means we've got our wait list. But if you see in the center of that library card, there's the pause symbol. I have suspended that hold. Or if we come down to the squad, I can see here that there's a calendar on my library card. So I am still waiting, but we can also see available soon. So if I tap on this library card, it's going to show me all sorts of info. You can see your current place in line, an estimated wait time on the hold. You can also see the total copies the library owns and the total number of people waiting in line for the book. And if you come down to manage hold, this is where you can see your options to suspend the hold. You know, you want a little bit more time. So if you tap into suspend, you can suspend it until you are ready for it. Or if you decide you're not interested in that title anymore, you can cancel your hold. So again, if you are not ready for the book when your hold comes in, no need to fret. Libby lets you suspend your hold. You'll keep your place at the front of the line, but the book goes to the next person. This is perfect if you've got so many things you want to read, or if you're not in the mood for that genre or book at the moment that it becomes available to you. Now, if you do nothing when the hold becomes available, your hold will be suspended automatically for you once as a courtesy. And holds will lapse if they're suspended for more than 365 days in a row. So when you are ready for that suspended hold, you just have to unsuspend it. Holds no longer unsuspend automatically. So again, you'll have head into your shelf and your holds, and we'll just come up top to unsuspend. I have a couple suspended here. So let's click on ghosts. I will choose unsuspend and then unsuspend your hold when you're ready for it. Hold suspended for more than a year will lapse. We've got all our warnings right here. I'm going to say unsuspend hold. Now, basically, what this means is once the person currently borrowing ghosts is done with it, I will be alerted that it's ready for me to borrow because I am next in line. Now, you can even sort your holds by when they'll be likely to come due next. If you tap on the filter button, you can show all your holds, and it's a great sense to see what's coming up next. Well, how about that? Thank you for checking out Suspending Holds with me. Let's head into segment 2 and see what Cece and Meara are recommending with me. Well, welcome to segment 2. I am joined by our incredible guest hosts to give you recommendations that go beyond the label. Books written by authors or about characters with disabilities, characters who are neurodivergent, characters that deal with chronic illness, and more. Joining me today, I have Cece and Meara here. Welcome back to both of you.
Hi, good to be back as always.
This episode just really speaks to me. I love another way to show representation. So the three of us pulling books that focus on neurodivergence, that focus on disability, that focus on chronic illness or chronic pain. I think it's nice to see that. And even when I was like researching and pulling titles, to see that there are a lot of options out there and you don't have to feel alone. Um, to both of you, what resonates with this topic?
Well, for me personally, these are things that I live with daily. So, I have OCD, so I fall into the neurodivergent spectrum. My mental health professionals also suspect ADHD, but they don't want to put the work into testing for that. So we just vibe. And then my best friend has a service dog. And we are together like every single day. I also like to joke that my best friend is a service dog. They are both my best friend. Um, but so like I live in the world of like visible disability daily by association and just by being beside her. Even though she is not visibly disabled. So that's a whole nother part of it, of the having a physical accommodation when people can't physically see your disability and just the agitations that come with that. And so I've been very passionate about disability and accommodation um, through her and that. Both my mom and my sister are hard of hearing. So I think that disability is just something that almost everyone in the world either experiences or lives adjacent to. And if you don't, you might, and they haven't told you, or if that's not the case, it is, as we all know, the one like marginalized identity that any of us can become a part of at the drop of a hat. So it's also just very important to stay on top of, aware of, and an advocate for, because you never know who it is impacting, who it's going to impact, etc.
Absolutely. Cece, how about you?
I I absolutely love all of that. I also live with someone with an invisible disability and chronic pain, and so it is a reality in our household every single day. I'm autistic and I have ADHD. I have been dealing with mental health and neurodivergency for my entire life, whether it's myself or my family, especially because um, mental illness runs in family. Talk about depression and anxiety because it impacts the people in my family more than other families. And so being able to talk openly about what is going on in your life, being able to talk about the accommodations you need, being able to talk to the people in your life and know that they listen, that has always been extremely important to me. And so I think that all just crosses over into reading the way that, I think all aspects of our life kind of cross over into fiction, where I want to be able to see the world around me in the fiction that I'm reading, in the fantasy that I'm reading, because these characters are people that are in my life every day.
Absolutely, Cece. I love that. And thank you both for sharing. I think there is a level of authenticity that comes in writing when authors include characters that are truly full rounded because, right, whether you can see it or not, whether you are aware or not, we're all around you. I mean, we're all around you one way or another. I mean, Meara, I'm right there with you in the like, oh, suspected ADHD, but do we really want to go get tested? And I have anxiety and agoraphobia. So like there's like lots of fun things that we all bring with us that we don't necessarily share or that people aren't aware of. And so seeing books like this, when you think of, I think of the people in my life with the chronic tummy troubles that we can laugh and say that, but IBS, Crohn's, all of these things are real. And then when you see like, and there are books for kids to understand why they don't feel good. And I'm actually going to use that as a transition for my first pick. My first pick is a juvenile title. It's a middle grade title. The Year My Life Went Down the Toilet by Jake Maya Arlo. This one came out in 2023 from our friends over at Penguin Young Readers. It is a hilariously honest book about surviving middle school while navigating a chronic illness from the Stonewall Honor winning author of Almost Flying. 12-year-old Al Schneider is too scared to talk about the two biggest things in her life. Her stomach hurts all the time, and she has no idea why. And she is almost definitely 100% sure that she likes girls. So she holds it in until she can't. After nearly having an accident of the lavatorial variety in gym class, Al finds herself getting a colonoscopy and an answer. She has Crohn's disease. But rather than solving all her problems, her diagnosis just makes everything worse. It's scary and embarrassing, and worst of all, everyone wants her to talk about it. Her overprotective mom, her best friend, and most annoyingly, her gastroenterologist, who keeps trying to get her to go to a support group for kids with similar chronic illnesses. Also, shout out for including a support group for kids with chronic illnesses, because who would think of that until you're in it? But who wants to talk about what you do in the bathroom? The Year My Life Went Down the Toilet is a wildly funny and honest story about finding community, telling the truth even when it's hard, and many indignities of middle school life. So again, that is The Year My Life Went Down the Toilet by Jake Maya Arlo. Give it a read. Even if you are just coming to terms maybe with your own diagnosis, again, this is where I go to like some of my favorite ways to get into new genres and to like bridge gaps in my knowledge is to go young. Middle grade, perfect way. Like I'm right there with you.
I actually would have loved this book as a kid
Uh-huh.
because when I was growing up, my neighbor got diagnosed with Crohn's disease, and I had no context for what that was. And like, obviously, didn't want to be invasive and ask a ton of questions. And I think it'd have been so great for their parents to be able to just point to this book and be like, actually, Mira, like, if you want to learn about what's going on, like, here you go. Like, here's a resource. And then,
Yes.
because it's such a hard thing to navigate, whether you yourself have a disability or not, getting to know someone else and their disability, there's definitely a line that you try not to cross, and I think when you're able to point to media and be like, "Actually, here's a reference point for you," that just really makes things easier, and it gives you a middle ground about it that takes away a really personal and sensitive element.
It's such a good point because we don't want to keep up the shame that for years was a form of protection. And I know I air quoted that, but it did intend to be protective. We don't want to embarrass someone. We don't want to overstep. We don't want to ask too many questions. But especially with kids, there is curiosity and there needs to be an understanding and there needs to be space for them to go, well, I feel like that. Do I, like chance for early detection and, for things to change. But then the other part of that is it no longer has to be the job of the disabled, the ill, the whatever person to also be an educator. Like, you don't have to be the perfect example of XYZ and teach everyone you meet about your illness and what this means, because that's just as exhausting.
Oh, yeah. I can't tell you how mad I get having to fight random strangers about my friend's service dog.
Right.
And that's just such a small portion of what she deals with constantly. So the more that we have these like authentic voices talking about these things and it becomes mainstream. And that's why I'm always like so excited when I read a book where especially, I mean, like books that center the disability are very important, but I love when it's a book where it's just this is all happening and they have a disability.
Right. Right.
Because
To
people,
Cece's point
Yes.
earlier of like, I want the person with whatever in my fantasy because a person with whatever is in my life. And so this centers me. It feels more normal to what I'm used to in my everyday, but also it just like it makes it normal. It makes it a part of everyday life. And
yep.
it's not out of place. It's.
Yeah. I normalized rep, I guess, normalized representation is how I kind of think about it. Is it's one of my like most sought after forms of representation in literature because it normalizes so many different things. I actually would love to use that to talk about my first book, which
Yeah, do
is
it.
What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher, because it is an incredible gothic horror novella that is so many things, but it is also about a disabled character whose disabilities impact them throughout the story. So, What Moves the Dead is an introduction to a novella series, actually, and the first book in the series is a retelling of the Edgar Allan Poe story, The Fall of the House of Usher. So we are following a character named Alex Easton, an ex-soldier who is headed to the remote Usher residence after they receive a deeply concerning letter from their childhood friend, Madeline. Upon arriving, they find Madeline incredibly ill, her brother Roderick sick and aged with worry, and animals moving on the property in disturbing ways. Alex works with Roderick, a visiting American doctor, and a curious mycologist to figure out what is happening to Madeline and to the land around them. And Alex is non binary and has PTSD, a chronic shoulder injury, and tinnitus. These are all parts of Alex's identity that impact them throughout the story, but it's not about that. It's a gothic horror story with so much humor injected into it, which is 100% a hallmark of T. Kingfisher's writing. And it's also something that includes a lot of bigger fantasy world building. It's just a story that's really unique and something that made me feel more accepted and seen in this interesting story set in the 1890s about a disabled character trying to solve a really scary mystery.
I love that book. That book really solidified T. Kingfisher as a must-read author for me. And if I could make the most absurd comparison, but it's almost like spooky Knives Out.
I
Yeah.
love that so much. Yes.
Spooky Knives Out is the perfect way to put it.
Like when I was reading it, I was like, "Ooh, I feel like I'm like in a Knives Out mystery right now," and
It's
but like also got the heebie-jeebies.
yeah, it's got like that quirk and charm to it that is just so even while you're like scared and it's so creepy, I'm just charmed by the characters so much.
Yeah,
Yeah, it feels so real. The atmosphere is like perfect, great vibes, but also again, to your point, it's that like it is normalized. It is not like I'm full of air quotes today, like stunt casting. Like the disabilities and the whatever list of things is not for effect. It has purpose, but it does not drive the narrative. It
Yeah.
drives the character's motivations. It doesn't, so like, I don't know. There's just a lot to normalization there, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Well, Meara, I don't have a beautiful transition for you, but would you like to give us your first title?
I absolutely would. So my first pick is Vespertine by Margaret Rogerson. It's actually been a few years since I read this book, so I'm gonna go off of the actual description for like the first time ever as I do this. But basically, I will say, kind of think of this book as like Venom, or very similar to One Dark Window, where it's a teenage girl, dark spirit that she has to like partner with, and it's kind of like he's a bad guy, but he's a good bad guy because he's helping the teenage girl. Um, so our main character, her name is Artemisia. She is training to be a nun who cleanses the body of the deceased so that their souls can pass on. Because if they are not cleansed, their spirits will rise as a ravenous hunger for the living. And she has scarred hands from a fire that she endured as a child in her childhood, from a spell. And so because of these scars, she doesn't really like being amongst the living. She has struggles with dexterity. And so she finds that dealing with the dead is just kind of her preferred way to deal with this. Because it says she'd rather deal with the dead than the living, who trade whispers about her scarred hands and troubled past. But then her convent is attacked by possessed soldiers, and she defends it by awakening an ancient spirit bound to a saint's relic. And that is a revenant, a malevolent being that threatens to possess her the moment she drops her guard. Wielding its extraordinary power almost consumes her, but death has come, and only a Vespertine, a priestess trained to wield a high relic, has any chance of stopping it. With all knowledge of Vespertine's loss of time, she turns to the last remaining expert for help, the Revenant itself. So she unravels a sinister mystery of saints, secrets, and dark magic. Her bond with the Revenant grows, and when a hidden evil begins to surface, she discovers that facing this enemy might require her to betray everything she has been taught to believe if the Revenant doesn't betray her first.
I'm sold.
So another story of someone having a disability, but that is not the point of their story.
Right. Right. Absolutely. I mean, I'm trying to think of like general cataloging terms. I think this would classify as like disfigurement,
Yeah.
and like the especially like depending on the time, the shame or the whispers as you're talking about, but also right then, oh, hand dexterity has been impacted. And yeah.
And she like has to wield a dagger. And so there's like parts that deal with that. So like part of the things that she has to do to succeed in this are impacted. And another thing about this book is that Artemisia, our main character, is 100% neurodivergent. The author has confirmed it. People have actually like messaged the author being like, is she autistic? Because I see myself in her. And the author's like, absolutely, she is. So it's never actually said in words. It's also high fantasy. So it's kind of one of those things where like they can't really say like pop some champagne because champagne doesn't exist in high fantasy. But you read the writing on the wall as the characterization is there.
Oh, fantastic. Well, my next pick is Never the Wind by Francesco Dimitri. This one came out in 2022. It is a bittersweet gothic fantasy of family, friendship, memory, and the uncanny, told from the perspective of a blind teenager in Puglia, southern Italy, set in the same world as the Book of Hidden Things, perfect for readers of Donna Tartt and Haruki Murakami. So, shocker that this is a book I would have put on a list. In 1996, Luca Saracino is 13 and has been completely blind for 8 months. When his parents move to a southern Italian farmhouse, they dream of turning into a hotel. With his brother dropping out of university and the family reeling from Luca's diagnosis, they're chasing dreams of rebirth and reinvention. As Luca tells his story without sight, experiencing the world solely through hearing, smell, taste, and touch, he meets the dauntless Ada Guadalupe, who takes him out to explore the rocky fields and empty beaches. But Luca and Ada find they can't escape the grudges that have lasted between their families for generations, or the gossiping of the town. And Luca is preyed upon by a feral wanderer who walks the vineyards of his home. As Luca's family starts to crack at the seams, Luca and Ada have to navigate new lands and old rivalries to uncover the truths spoken as the whispers on the wind. It's not a usual pick for me, but it was just so, I don't know, there was something about it that just captivated me. And there's something I find that like every once in a while I need like a creepy story set in Italy. I I can't explain it, but since I read Diavola, I find that like one creepy Italian setting pops in. I'm like, well, works for me. Also 1996. I don't know, like a little bit of 90s. And yeah, this just kind of like coming to terms with the loss of one of your senses is very fascinating. And then all of a sudden, like we're being guided through storytelling in such a unique way. And who doesn't love some like family drama and all of this kind of come together? But then, of course, you have the fantastical element.
Yeah, I was going to ask about the fantasy because, like, clearly this is taking place in a real place with like very like real common experiences, like dropping out of university, they're making a hotel, but it's a fantasy. What is it? The Wanderer that is like the fantasy element?
It's like magical realism spec fiction adjacent is more what I
Oh.
would consider it than fantasy. I think there are like
Mhm.
some
Okay.
lines there, but also like bittersweet gothic fantasy. I think it's the like you consider the time period, you consider what's going on, and it's more like a vibe, but I also can't say too much without like giving it away. So sorry, I have to be
Interesting.
vague.
Is it
Okay.
like what I'm kind of imagining in terms of like atmosphere is Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil, where it's like rooted in real life, but there's like magical
Yes.
elements and it's like in a very specific setting. Is it kind of
Yes.
that deal? Cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay.
Definitely.
Very
Definitely.
cool.
Yeah. So a little weird one for you there.
I like it.
Okay, Cece, what do you have for us?
Well, the other one that I wanted to talk about, since I talked about kind of like a more normalized inclusion of disability, I also wanted to talk about a book that sort of can only be from the perspective of somebody neurodivergent or someone working through how their neurodivergence or disability is directly impacting their story. So this one's a little older, but I wanted to talk about On the Edge of Gone by Corinne Doivas because it is a brilliant piece of YA sci-fi. It's very, very character driven, and Corinne is an incredible author with a whole lot of books about disabled characters in so many unique settings. But On the Edge of Gone follows Denise, a character who is biracial and Dutch, and she's also autistic. And she is trying to argue for space for herself, her mother, and her sister on board a generation ship that's scheduled to leave Earth shortly before a comet is going to hit it. So we've got 2 weeks to the end of the world, and Denise and her family were going to ride it out in a shelter, but they get this incredible opportunity. So her mother, who struggles with addiction, has been kind of slowing them down as they've been trying to make their way to a shelter, and she currently cannot find her sister. So Denise, who's only 16, is forced into being the adult in this situation, which is already terrifying. And in arguing for her place on board the ship, she's faced almost constantly with how people measure the value of human life based on someone's usefulness. And that's something that she has a lot of really complicated and loaded feelings about. This book means a lot to me because I think a lot of popular autistic and neurodiverse characters in media have been deemed sort of more acceptable because their autism gives them like special skills or superpowers. Like, how can you be mad that I don't understand social cues or that I hate touching corduroy if that like helps me solve crime? But the thing is that I shouldn't have to be any of those extra things to still be acceptable, to still be loved. I think that there's a really difficult and relatable debate that Denise is going through in this book where she's feeling like she doesn't have the quote unquote right kind of autism. The autism that makes you like cool and special instead of just autistic. But the thing is, we should be allowed to be just autistic, and that's still valuable. There's a quote in this book that is, whether someone is useful only matters if you value people by their use. I think that's a pretty central quote for this book and this topic. So if you like character-driven sci-fi and sci-fi that's asking big questions, I would really recommend it. And if you love stories, speculative stories about disabled characters, then I recommend Corinne as an author.
First of all, books where it is like, end of the world, have to get onto the spaceship to get out. I eat them up. I love them. They are so good. Every single one. Because like there's just so much possibility and there's like so much you can do. And it is always, always, always so reflective of like ability, and like it is always a commentary on disability and like usefulness. Like it's just like you can't have these stories and not have like an anti-capitalist storyline or theme, and I love them. And I am looking at a page about this book, and I'm so like impressed that this book came out in 2016, because I feel like a lot of what you were saying of the conversation about like autistic people being acceptable for like the special skills that they bring to the table, I feel like a lot of those conversations feel almost like newer. Like I feel like The Good Doctor fueled a lot of those conversations. And the fact that this book predates that show, and when I saw more of those conversations in the like more comments, because I know that those conversations were happening in nuanced spaces, but in the like public eye, it's definitely a more recent conversation.
Yeah.
So for this book to have already been doing it is just, it makes it an exciting perspective read.
The Good Doctor is
and
exactly
that's
what
definitely-
came to mind for me. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's exactly why I wanted to be able to bring this book up. Also because I believe Corinne was sort of the originator of the hashtag Own Voices, which has taken on a life of its own in the years since. But Corinne was writing back then as an actually autistic author, working in making sure that disabled people were being represented in the publishing industry. So it's also notable if you're in sort of spaces where you talk about books and representation, you've probably heard Own Voices as a hashtag. So that's also wanted to give that credit where it's due.
Oh, so incredibly important to bring that to the table. Absolutely. Well, Meara, do you want to take us home with your last pick?
Absolutely, I will. My pick is also a book where I saw myself, because it was an own voices scenario of an author writing a character with their own lived experience. It is How to Kill Your Family by Bella Mackie. Whenever someone sees it on my bookshelf, they're like, what is that? And I'm like, oh, I actually love that book. Let me tell you about it. And I will be honest, it's like not for everybody. I have talked about it a lot on my TikTok, and I think every time I post about it, someone's like, I didn't like that book. And I'm like, okay, well, you don't have to like every book. We don't have to like all the same books, but I love this book. It is very funny and dark. It is written from the perspective of a woman who is in prison for a crime that she did not commit, but she is telling us about all the crimes that she did commit, because she murdered everyone on her dad's side of the family, because she is the product of a, not like one night stand, but like a not significant relationship. And her mother recently died of breast cancer, and she never knew her dad, but her dad was a very wealthy man. And she's like, if he had just paid for her treatment, like my mom would still be here. And so she's like, I'm going to kill him and his whole family, and none of them will get his money. And this is my revenge. And so like the book is her going after and like very intentionally target. It's not like she's just like walking up and shooting somebody. It's like she is like getting to know them and like working herself into their life and like killing them in like very creative and targeted in specific ways. Some of them very vulgar ways. It's a very fun book. But as I was reading it, the characters never blatantly said to have OCD, but I was reading this and I was like, I see myself in this girl. I see myself in this picture, other than the murdering part. This is me. And I actually flipped through my copy because I was like annotating it as I was reading it. And I found this section that I had just like deeply circled. And I was like, girl, this is OCD. And so I'll read it to you. He wasn't the kind of person to not trust his own thoughts. Me, I had thoughts all the time that I dismissed, knowing them to be warped, self-defeating, treacherous, intrusive thoughts which feel like your own, but they aren't. Not really. They've muscled their way into your brain and dressed up as your thoughts. He won't know not to trust his thoughts, because when has he ever had a thought so scary or perverse that he's come to understand that his brain isn't always his ally? So she's kind of talking about how she can like gaslight this guy basically because his own brain doesn't gaslight him in the way that OCD does and people with OCD live with constantly. And so I did do some research. Bella Mackie, the author, has talked about her own experience with having OCD. So I was like, okay, absolutely confirm this character does have obsessive compulsive disorder. And I see myself in this picture. And I like it. And I like it.
But that's what this is all about. It's the chance to be seen and to recognize and normalize.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, consider me sold. That sounds absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, it's really fun. Whenever
Just,
people don't like it, I'm like, have fun, enjoy things.
you know, yeah, we can have a little violence as a treat. Come on.
Yes. And it's also like, so it takes, the main character is British, but it takes a lot of shots at politics and American politics in a very fun, funny way where it's just like this would have felt better than Hillary beating Trump and stuff like that. Like, it's just like very pop culture, but like snarky.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah, but it's nice to have something different. We'll take a little fake book violence. Sometimes you just need to shake it up.
Yeah. It's cathartic.
Yeah. I was going to
Absolutely.
say, sometimes you need the catharsis of it.
Exactly.
Well, Cece, Meara, thank you for joining me today and sharing your picks.
Thank you for a great topic. I think that this is a
Yeah,
topic that like
seriously.
people need to be louder about. I
Mhm.
think that people are recommending books with this representation, but it's not for the purpose of the representation in the books.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think you're right. That I hope we did something different today that it's the like recognize what the point of this was. Like see the character, understand like I say it a lot in every episode, but like use books as an opportunity to understand something you may not live with, but someone you cares about lives with, or practice some empathy and feel something for someone you don't even know.
Yep, exactly.
Well, soapbox over, but thank you both so much. And now we will awkwardly transition to me doing an outro, maybe in the same outfit, maybe in a different outfit. I won't tell, but you'll see in a second. I want to give a big thank you to all of our guests today. In segment 1, I really appreciate Marie's candor, sharing her experience working with her son and providing care and navigating expectations and reality. And in segment 2, Cece and Meara were vulnerable about their own experiences going beyond the label and gave us excellent books to add to our TBRs. Now, make sure you're subscribed and following the show. You won't want to miss next week for episode 4 when I get us in the Halloween spirit by talking all things horror with some amazing voices in the space for both adult and YA. What drives them, what scares them, and what keeps them writing. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to follow Book Lounge by Libby on your favorite podcast app and check out the Libby app YouTube channel for our video content. You can reach me via email, bookloungebylibby@overdrive.com. And you can also find us on social media. We're at libby.app on Instagram. If you're loving the show, a quick rating or review on your favorite podcast platform will help other book lovers find us, and I will appreciate it ever so much. Thank you so much for joining me today. And as always, happy reading! You can sample and borrow the books from today's episode in the Libby app, or if you're a librarian, find them for purchase in Overdrive Marketplace. Book Lounge by Libby is a proud Evergreen Podcast signature program. Explore more amazing shows at evergreenpodcasts.com. This podcast is produced and recorded by me, Joe Skelly, with editing by Andrew Alonzo. Our theme music is High Five by Rex Banner, used with permission. Book Lounge by Libby is presented by the Libby app. Learn more at libbylife.com/booklounge.